Hi guys, today I'm going to be doing a near full face of Dior makeup and also using this holiday Dior palette. This is called the Dior, it's the ÉCRIN Couture, it's the iconic eye makeup, and this is a 5-pan eyeshadow palette. It is really beautiful and the packaging is just stunning. Now I also picked up last year's as well and that was really beautiful. And I was unsure whether to pick up the palettes again this year. So I pulled my old one out about 2 weeks ago and put it on, and the formula is just really beautiful. So I'm hoping the formula of this is going to be really gorgeous too. I'm sure it will be. I also picked up from the Dior Holiday Collection the bigger palette. That's the one with the quint, the 2 blushes, it's got a highlighter and the lipsticks as well. And I'll be doing that in a future video, probably this week at some time. But before we take a look at the palette, I'm going to put some primer on. I have all my skincare done for the day, with the last step being sunscreen. So I'm going to use the Hourglass, it's the Vanish Airbrush primer. This and the Tom Ford are probably my favourite primers. The foundation I'm going to wear today is a Dior one, and it's more of the matte ones. So this is probably a better primer perhaps to go with a foundation that's a bit more matte. I think the Tom Ford one is a gorgeous primer. It just is that little bit more mattifying. I had someone in my comments a little while ago, I think it was on the video when I bought this earlier in the year, asking about this primer and whether it was suitable for normal to dry skin. I would say that it would be. Those of you that haven't seen my videos before, I do have really oily skin and also mature skin. This doesn't leave a mattifying finish or anything like that. It just smooths everything down, and it has this beautiful blurring effect as well, and it really does make foundations just look that little bit better as well. And that is the second bottle that I've purchased now. It's just an absolutely gorgeous primer. So the foundation that I'm going to use today is the Dior Forever one. This is the more mattifying one, and this is in the shade 2.5N. I also have this foundation in 3N, and there's quite a big shade difference between the two. And I'm just going to put this foundation on with a beauty blender. When I have a foundation that's a little bit more matte, I often do use a beauty blender. I don't know why really. They go on well with a brush too, but I just find they just go on perhaps a little bit better with a beauty blender. The other thing with a beauty blender is I find you can really push the product into your skin. And as everyone has texture, but I have quite noticeable pores through here, and a beauty blender really helps to just push that product in and just give a really smooth effect. Of course, it also helps having a really good primer underneath, and I think the Hourglass primer does a really good job at blurring and making the pores less visible. So it's now late spring here in New Zealand and the weather is definitely warmer. So this is the time that I do start wearing foundations, especially if I'm going to wear one that I want to last all day, ones that just are a little bit more mattifying. And this one lasts really well with my oily skin. It's a really lovely foundation. Those of you that haven't tried it, this does have a fragrance to it, but I don't find that it lingers. But in saying that, that's me. I had someone recently who said they purchased that new, I think it might be the new Guerlain foundation, which is absolutely beautiful, and that does have a fragrance, and they were saying that when they put a tester, I think it was on their arm or somewhere, it lasted all throughout the day and overtook their perfumes. But for me, that foundation didn't do that. You can smell the fragrance initially and then it just sort of dissipates, and the same with this Dior one as well. But of course everyone's different, and perhaps some people's skin chemistry is different or more sensitive to fragrances when it comes to foundations. So I've now done my eyebrows. I've put eyeshadow primer on and lightly powdered over that. I've also put concealer under my eyes and some powder over the top. and then a different powder just to set my foundation. None of those were Dior products, but everything that I've put on my face today will be listed and linked in the description box below. So now I'll put on some bronzer, and I think I will put on 2 bronzers today, or 2 different shades. They're both the Dior Forever ones, and one is the shade 05 and one is 06. And one is warm and one is a little bit cooler. So we'll start off with the 05 first. I'm just going to grab the Sonia G. It's a Niji Pro brush. I've got 2 of these. I washed the other one last night, so it's always good now to have a spare, because this is the brush that I use. It would be nearly every single day for bronzer. So these Dior bronzers are really, really lovely. So I'll just go fairly lightly since I'm going to double bronze. But I find that these blend really beautifully. And I'm not sure now whether they did have a fragrance or not when I purchased them. But I can't smell anything now. So if they had a fragrance, I think that is now gone, since these are... Well, they're not that old, but they're probably coming up to possibly be close to a year old now. And then I'm just going to grab the 06, and I'll just tap lightly into this and just add just a little bit over the top, just to give a little bit of depth. And I have used them together before, and I just think it looks really nice. And since it's now late spring here, I like to get a really beautiful warm look to the face. The other bronzers that I pair up quite a bit, and those are the Guerlain bronzers. I tend to use a couple of those at the same time as well, and I just really like the look that it gives, mixing a warm and a cooler one together. So now let's take a look at the Holiday Dior. It's the ÉCRIN Couture palette. As I was saying at the beginning of the video, this is a 5-pan eyeshadow. I think there are 2 shimmers and 3 mattes in here. And the outside packaging is really beautiful. I am loving the design this year with that deep blue and the gold. And it's got the constellation theme going there. It's just really, really beautiful. And on the side there, it does give an indication of what the shades are. These are made in France, and it says there is 9.9 grams of product. And this label here on the bottom that I was just showing you, you can peel that back, and it does give the different numbers of the eyeshadows that are in there. So if I peel this sticker back, you've got numbers 742, 522, 779, and then it's also got 797 and 579. Those are the numbers of the eyeshadows. And last year's palette was a beautiful faux leather with embossing, and this year's is the velvet, and the pattern is on the gold bar on the front there. I think the velvet feels really, really beautiful. It's quite luxurious, so I'll just hold it up so you can take a look. But it really is beautiful packaging, and it just opens up. It has a really good mirror inside. It does have the magnetic closure, and this also folds right back, so if you want to sit it on the table, you can. And this does come with quite a decent size little brush inside, and one side has a sponge tip applicator, and the other one is just a small angled brush. So here is the color story for this year's ÉCRIN Couture palette, and it's a really beautiful neutral eyeshadow palette, my type of shades, and I just couldn't resist picking it up. So you have there, you've got the 3 mattes and you've got 2 shimmers. Now I've also got last year's one here as well. So I'll hold this up so you can take a look at that. So this was the packaging last year. So it had the faux leather with that embossing, which I hope you can see. It is really, really lovely. and I'll just hold up this year's palette beside it. I think both are really, really beautiful. And I quite like it this year that they put the engraving on that gold bar. I think it looks really, really nice. So I'll show you both of the palettes side by side. So this one here is last year's palette, and this is this year's one. And this year's has 2 shimmer shades, whereas last year's just had the one. Now last year's palette, as I said at the beginning of the video, the formula is really beautiful. I found it to be really smooth and buttery going on, and I'm hoping that this year's will be as well. And the colour story is lovely. It's just a really beautiful neutral. So I'll swatch this year's on my arm, and then once I've shown you that, then I'll swatch last year's one on my arm as well. So this is this year's palette, and this is last year's one. So they both do have, I was mistaken, so there's the shimmer shades here, the shimmer shades in last year's as well. This year's there are 3 mattes, and in last year's it looks like there were 2 mattes and 1 satin. So I'm going to start off with the shade here. I'm going to take the Sonia G, this is the Classic Crease. Now when I tried last year's palette a couple of weeks ago, didn't need very much product, so I'll go fairly easy. So I only just lightly tapped, and there is quite a bit of pigment. And at this stage, these feel just the same, really smooth, blending really, really beautifully. I'm going to take the Sonia G, this is the soft shader. I'm going to stay with the shade, and I'll run some of this on my lower lash line, and I'll take it right across. Just going to put down just a very light layer, and I will be going over this, probably with this deeper shade here, and also with one of the shimmers as well. Then I'm going to take the Refa number 14, and I'm going to go into the darkest shade here, and just pop some in the outer corner. I'm hardly really touching the powder with my brush, and it's picking up a lot of pigment. So pigment wise, and the way they blend, are just like last year's 5-pan palette. And they are really smooth and just blending really, really beautifully too. So with this shade, I'm going to take this through the crease and take it up here as well, and just smoke it out just a little bit. And we're going to stay with the same shade. This is the Sonia G, this is the pencil one. Go into the deeper shade again. And I'm going to run some of this along my lower lash line. They are so smooth and pigmented that just using this brush and just pulling it along lightly, it's almost like you're using an eyeliner. Really, really beautiful shadows. And then I've just wiped down the pencil one brush, and now I'm going to go into this shade. This is like a brick rust type of colour, and I'm going to run this just through here. Then I'm going to take the Chocohodo, this is the F06, and I'm going to go into this shade here. And I like it that this palette both has a silver and a gold. So the gold I'm going to put through here. Then I've got the Refa number 3, and I'm just going to take a little bit of this shade here and just put this just in the very inner corner. And for eyeliner, I'm going to use a Guerlain one. This is in the shade Brown Earth. And I'm going to just tight line under my top lash. And then I'll also put just a little bit of eyeliner on the lower lash line as well. And for blush, I'm going to use one from the holiday collection as well that I've used in a previous video. And this is the one Galactic Red. And I'm just going to take my Hourglass brush. This is a really beautiful coloured blush, this one. It has just a really beautiful depth to it. It gives a really gorgeous colour to the cheeks. It's really beautiful. Even though it is spring here and warm in New Zealand, it does remind me of the look on the cheeks when you've been out on a cold winter's day. I think it's really, really beautiful. And then for a little bit of highlight, I'm going to go back into this palette and I'm going to take the Refa number 16 and just very lightly go into this shade here and just put a tiny bit of highlight through here. Don't need much. These are fairly pigmented, but it does give a really beautiful gold highlight through there. And then I'm going to use the Dior Lip Glow, and this is in the shade 1947 Miss Dior. I think this is a really, really beautiful shade. So I think that the final look is really beautiful. These shadows were an absolute joy to use. I think the formula is the same as last year's, very smooth, blend out really beautifully. I did use all 5 of the shades that are in this palette, but you don't need to. If I was going to do some other eye looks, I would even just use this shade here, just all over the lid, and perhaps a little bit of either one of these shades here just for the inner corner and a little bit on the lower lash line, and I think you'd have a really beautiful look. Or again, just this shade and take one of these 2 through here, and again just using 2 of the shades, I think you would get a really beautiful look. Or if you were more drawn to this rust coloured shade, which I think is really, it's an earthy, rusty shade, it's really beautiful. Even that over most of the lid, and then probably with the gold through here, I think is just stunning. These are so pigmented and just are so smooth. When I use this rust coloured shade to just, and you still slightly see the line through here, I just had to pull it through, and it really was like I was using a smooth eyeliner. I didn't have to go back and forth or harsh over the lid. They really do have a beautiful formula, and I think this is a really gorgeous neutral colour story. And adding in these 2 shimmer shades here, you can certainly get a really beautiful holiday look. I still love the blush. I said that in the last video when I use it. I think it's a beautiful, deep, rich colour, and I still love it. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And I love the lipstick, the Lip Glow, and in the shade, the 1947 Miss Dior. I think it's really, really pretty. So overall, I'm really pleased that I picked up this palette. I like collecting them. I think they're really beautiful, and really I'm a sucker for beautiful packaging. And with the velvet, this is really beautiful. I love the faux leather on last year's one, but I think that the velvet is just really luxurious, and I love the embossing on this gold bar through here. I think it's really, really lovely. I also think that this would make a lovely gift for someone. The box that it comes in, it's just down here, so I'll just pick that up again, but the box that it comes in is just beautiful. You almost wouldn't need wrapping paper, just perhaps a bow in the corner, and just a really beautiful present. So really thrilled that I picked these up, and I'm looking forward to using the bigger Dior Holiday palette as well, the one with the quint, the blushes, the highlighter and the lipsticks all in one. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Bye.